Well, as you said, the NSE index closed higher today. It gained 32 basis points. So we continue to see that gradual uptrend. However, volumes continue to remain somewhat low. And most brokers are saying that this simply reflects the pickiness of investors right now. Most of them are generally deciding to scale in gradually into positions. Looking at the gainers and losers today, however, we saw that May and Baker gained 4.9%. We saw that, interestingly, that stock, that counter recently reported a 55% drop in profits after tax. So it will be interesting to get some views on that result from our guest. We also saw Union Bank gain limit up today, and investors obviously are reporting to the positive numbers that the company reported yesterday. We saw that profits after tax for the first quarter were up to 3.3 billion. And obviously on the loser side, we saw Stark Homes lose about 4.9%. That stock coming up under a little bit of profit-taking pressure after rallying for over the last few sessions. So joining us in the studio today to give us his perspective on the market and, of course, on some of those results is Samuel Chidoka, who is Vice President at Dunn Lorren Merrifield. Samuel, thanks for coming to the program.
Thank you, Wally.
Okay, let's first of all start with the general market trend. We've seen that somewhat sideways trading pattern that most people have been forecasting coming into play. But what is your bias? Are you more positive or negative on that?
Well, as regards the market generally, this is a time for people to trade actively yet cautiously, because we have a lot of stocks on the market right now that fundamentally are trading at very good prices. But those stocks will be for long-term investors. And of course, there are some stocks in which you've seen some growth in terms of the numbers coming out of the company. And there are some stocks that have rallied just based on market perception. Right. So we expect to see the sideways trading going forward.
But are you biased positively or negatively? Do you think it's likely to go somewhat slightly higher or lower?
Somewhat slightly lower.
Okay. Anyway, let's look at Union Bank. Its first quarter results were released. Positive numbers, obviously, and interestingly, it's the first of the rescued banks to release numbers. I want to get your views on that. Does that, for you, make the stock a little more attractive?
Well, for Union Bank, we saw, first of all, the December 2009 results, which showed a negative net assets of about 228 billion naira. And then we saw the first quarter results coming out at bottom line of about 3.3 billion naira in the black, which good for the company, but yet it's we need to watch cautiously about what comes out from the bank, bearing in mind that they still have a negative net assets. And so that puts some form of caution on that particular stock.
Okay, interestingly, I mean, these are positive numbers, but we get the sense that the central bank might be struggling to sell some of these banks. What do you think, beyond obviously coming out with these positive numbers, that can make the rescued banks a little more attractive to investors?
Well, one of the things that you see about the rescued banks is that since the new management took over, there's been some form of progress in most of the banks, judging from Union Bank and what we hear coming out of some of the banks. Right. But we expect that for the central bank, they need to continue in the line of what they're doing. The new management needs to stay focused on rescuing the banks. And of course, the recovery of bad loans that has been going on, the central bank needs to continue to assist the banks in making recoveries, which would definitely go down to their bottom line.
So really, it's more of the recoveries.
Sure.
The recovery is what will make it more attractive. So
sure, because as long as the numbers coming out of the bank is good, people will look more favorably towards those banks.
What about the AMC then? The AMC is supposed to make a huge impact, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, the AMC has been priced into the market. As far as the market is concerned, when the buzz about the AMC was on, we expected that as soon as the AMC bill is passed, we'll see the market rally. Right. But what we are seeing today is that the market hasn't quite really rallied. Bearing in mind that the AMC only has a capitalization of about 20 billion, and the negative the negative loans that we hear coming out of the banks is somewhere about 1 trillion. Right. So we need to see a balance in that.
Okay, let's go outside banking now. Like I mentioned earlier, May and Baker released full-year results. We saw turnover was down 15%, profit down 55%. What's the story and what's your reaction to that?
Well, for May and Baker, it's not as bad as those numbers look, because you need to look at it in perspective of 2009. 2009, there was massive devaluation in the naira, right, and that affected many manufacturing and trading concerns. Right. For May and Baker to remain in the black, that they must have been doing something good. Remember that recently May and Baker diversified. Apart from being the pharmaceutical company, they went into the noodles business, which I believe would have helped them in balancing out what would have happened with the devaluation of the naira. So for Bay & Baker, I think the company has done well. 232 million naira positive. That's not bad for a manufacturing concern coming out of 2009. Not bad.
Okay, maybe lastly, let's look at the pharmaceutical sector a little more broadly. Any interesting stocks in that fair for you?
Well, we expect generally, as far as the manufacturing concerns and trading concerns, not just the pharmaceuticals are concerned, for this year, for the first half of this year, the naira has been a bit stable.
Right.
And so that should affect them positively other than what happened last year. Okay. What we expect to see going for them towards the end of the year is that once the naira will continue to remain stable, and they will not suffer the losses that they suffered last year. We expect good results to come out from the pharmaceutical, from the manufacturing concerns. This ought to be a good year for them. However, the caveat is that the naira needs to remain stable, and that the things government is doing towards power, towards electricity, would begin to work to their own advantage.
Well, I think one positive, obviously, is the inflation numbers coming down, and that certainly would help the manufacturing companies. Thank you very